The blood on Elena Cross's cleaning uniform wasn't hers. Not at first. But by the time two men cornered her in that rain-soaked alley, everything changed. They didn't want her money. They didn't want her silence. They wanted to send a message to the most dangerous man in Manhattan, and she was about to become the envelope. What happens when a woman meant to be invisible becomes the center of an underworld war? Stay until the end to find out how one act of violence rewrote the rules of Victor Romano's empire. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels, and hit that like button if you're ready for a tale of power, protection, and impossible choices. Elena Cross had perfected the art of being invisible. For 11 months, she had moved through Victor Romano's Manhattan mansion like a ghost, polishing marble that reflected nothing of her own worn face, dusting mahogany shelves lined with books she'd never have time to read, scrubbing floors where men in expensive suits discussed things she trained herself not to hear. The Romano estate sprawled across the Upper East Side like a cathedral to wealth and whispered power, and Elena was just another shadow among its many rooms. She worked the early shift, 6 to 2, before rushing to her evening job at a hospital laundry facility in Queens. Between both positions, she earned just enough to keep the debt collectors from her door, the ones who'd been circling since her mother's death 18 months ago. Cancer didn't care about insurance caps or pre-existing conditions. It just took and took until there was nothing left but paperwork and numbers that made Elena's hands shake. Her younger sister Maya was finishing her last year at community college. 20 years old and brilliant in ways Elena had never been, Maya carried dreams of becoming a teacher. Those dreams cost money. Everything costs money. So Elena cleaned and saved and made herself small enough to slip through the cracks of other people's lives. The Romano mansion had its own ecosystem, its own unspoken rules. The housekeeping staff, 6 women total, arrived before dawn and departed before the business of the estate truly began. Mrs. Chen, the head housekeeper, was a stern Taiwanese woman in her 60s who ran her team with military precision. Eyes down, mouth shut, ears closed, she told Elena on her first day. You see nothing. You hear nothing. You are paid very well to remember nothing. Understand? Elena understood perfectly. The pay was extraordinary, 3 times what she'd earned at her previous housekeeping job at a hotel in Midtown. The work was easier, too, despite the mansion's size. Everything was maintained to such exacting standards that the cleaning itself felt almost ceremonial. No guests left rings on the furniture. No one tracked mud across the Persian rugs. The house existed in a state of perpetual, intimidating perfection. She rarely saw Victor Romano himself. He was a presence more than a person. A name whispered in careful tones, a door that closed before she entered a room, a shadow passing in peripheral vision. On the rare occasions their paths crossed, Elena kept her eyes fixed firmly on the floor, her body angled away, her entire being screaming, "I am not here, I do not exist, I saw nothing." Mrs. Chen had warned them all. Mr. Romano valued discretion above all else. The women who cleaned his home were selected for their silence and their desperation. They needed the money too badly to risk asking questions. They had too much to lose to ever become problems. But Elena had glimpsed him, of course, brief, stolen glances that her curiosity couldn't quite suppress. Victor Romano was not what she expected. The tabloids painted him as a monster, a ruthless crime lord who'd inherited his father's empire and expanded it with calculated brutality. They printed grainy photos of him leaving courthouses, attending charity galas, standing in the background of political fundraisers. In those images, he looked like any other wealthy businessman. Tailored suits, cold eyes, the kind of face that revealed nothing. In person, he was something else entirely. Tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair going silver at the temples. Probably in his early 40s, though it was hard to tell. His face was all sharp angles, strong jaw, prominent cheekbones, a nose that had been broken at least once. But it was his eyes that unsettled Elena most. Dark, almost black, and utterly assessing. When Victor Romano looked at something, he saw it completely. He saw through it. Elena made sure he never looked at her. She timed her cleaning schedule around his routines. She learned which rooms he used in the mornings, which corridors he walked in the evenings. She became an expert at disappearing around corners, at keeping her cart of supplies between herself and any potential encounter. In 11 months, they'd exchanged perhaps a dozen words, all variations of her murmured, "Excuse me, Mr. Romano," when she couldn't avoid his path. He never responded, probably didn't even register her existence. That was exactly how Elena needed it to be. The mansion itself was a fortress disguised as luxury. 3 stories of limestone and steel, surrounded by walls that looked decorative but weren't. Security cameras covered every angle. Men in expensive suits stood at discreet intervals, their jackets failing to quite conceal the weapons beneath. The staff entrance was at the rear, through a service door that required a key card and a code that changed weekly. Mrs. Chen distributed the new codes every Monday morning with a reminder that sharing them with anyone, family, friends, other staff, was grounds for immediate termination and possibly worse. "Mr. Romano's privacy is absolute," she said. "His security is your security. Remember that." Elena remembered everything. She had to. Remembering kept her employed, and employment kept her sister in school and kept the debt collectors at a manageable distance. Her routine was unchanging. Wake at 4:30 in the Bronx apartment she shared with Maya. Shower in 3 minutes because the hot water heater was unreliable. Dress in the gray uniform Mrs. Chen provided, professional, anonymous, identical to what the other housekeepers wore. Catch the 5:10 train, reading medical bills on her phone while trying not to cry. Arrive at the mansion by 5:50, clock in, disappear. The work itself had a meditative quality once she stopped thinking about where she was. Vacuum in straight lines. Windex mirrors until they showed no streaks. Dust from top to bottom so nothing settles on already cleaned surfaces. Change linens with hospital corners. Scrub grout with a toothbrush in the master bathrooms. Polish silver that probably cost more than her annual salary. She cleaned Victor Romano's private study every Thursday. It was a room that intimidated her. Walls of law books and first editions, a desk that looked carved from a single piece of mahogany, windows that overlooked a private garden. There were always papers on the desk, but Mrs. Chen's instructions were absolute. Clean around them, never move them, never read them, never acknowledge they exist. Elena obeyed. Sometimes she wondered what those papers said. What kind of business required such secrecy, such protection? But mostly she tried not to think about it. Her mother used to say that curiosity was a luxury they couldn't afford. Better to focus on what was in front of you, on what you could control. Elena controlled very little, but she controlled her own silence. The other housekeepers were friendly enough, though they rarely socialized beyond the mansion walls. There was Rosa, who'd emigrated from Honduras and supported 3 kids on her own. There was Yuki, a Japanese woman in her 50s whose husband had left her with nothing but debt. There was Margaret, an Irish grandmother who needed the money to help raise her daughter's children after the daughter had been arrested. They all had stories. They all had reasons. They all understood the unspoken bargain: excellent pay in exchange for absolute discretion and the willingness to exist as furniture. During their brief lunch breaks in the staff room, a converted butler's pantry near the kitchen, they sometimes talked. Careful conversation about safe topics. Rosa's youngest had made honor roll. Yuki's son was getting married. Margaret's granddaughter was learning violin. Elena shared less. She mentioned Maya's college studies, but never the mounting debt. She mentioned her evening job, but not how exhausted she was. How sometimes she fell asleep on the train and woke 3 stops past her destination. She smiled when expected and kept everything else locked behind her teeth. "You're a quiet one," Margaret said once, not unkindly. "But that's good in this house. The quiet ones last longest." Elena wasn't sure if that was meant as comfort or warning. Probably both. The mansion had its rhythms, its patterns. Morning was for cleaning the public spaces, the foyer with its crystal chandelier, the formal dining room that sat 24, the parlor where Victor occasionally met with associates. Afternoon was for the private quarters, bedrooms, bathrooms, the personal spaces where the staff was least likely to encounter the estate's inhabitants. Victor's bedroom was off-limits except to Mrs. Chen herself. The older woman cleaned it personally daily and never discussed what she found there. The message was clear. Some boundaries were absolute. Elena didn't mind. There were plenty of other rooms to occupy her time, guest suites that were never used but maintained as though dignitaries might arrive any moment. a library that smelled of leather and old paper, a ballroom that hadn't hosted a party in years but still gleamed like a jewel box. It was beautiful, all of it. Beautiful and cold and utterly separate from the world Elena actually inhabited. She tried not to think about the contrast, tried not to compare the mansion's marble bathroom, larger than her entire apartment, to the chipped tile and leaking faucet she shared with Maya, tried not to calculate how many months of her salary were represented in a single Persian rug. It didn't matter. This wasn't her world. She was just passing through it, collecting a paycheck, surviving. But 11 months of invisible existence began to wear on a person. Sometimes Elena caught herself looking at her reflection in the mansion's many mirrors and not quite recognizing what she saw. A woman of 26 who looked older, brown hair pulled into a ruthlessly tight bun, hazel eyes ringed with the kind of exhaustion that makeup couldn't hide. A body that was slim not from health, but from the kind of stress that burned through calories like fuel. She'd been pretty once. She remembered that dimly, like something from someone else's life. In high school, before her mother got sick, before the world became about bills and jobs and keeping Maya safe. Boys had noticed her then. She'd even dated a little, though nothing serious. Now men's eyes slid past her like she was wallpaper. She'd learned to dress in clothes that were clean but shapeless, to move in ways that didn't draw attention, to make herself forgettable. It was safer that way. The city outside the mansion was a different kind of dangerous. New York had always been expensive, but in recent years it had become almost impossible for people like Elena. Rent consumed 3/4 of her income. Food prices climbed monthly. The debt from her mother's illness had been sold to collections agencies that called at all hours, threatening legal action she couldn't afford to fight. Maya didn't know how bad it was. Elena made sure of that. Her sister studied and dreamed and believed the world might still offer something good. Elena wouldn't take that from her. Not yet. Not if she could help it. So she worked. 2 jobs, 70 hours a week, every week. She ignored the headaches and the way her hands had started to shake sometimes from exhaustion. She ignored the fact that she was 26 and had no friends, no hobbies, no life beyond survival. She told herself it was temporary, just until Maya graduated, just until the debt was manageable, just until something changed. But nothing ever changed. October rain came early that year. By mid-month, the city was locked in a pattern of cold drizzle that seemed to seep into everything. Elena's cheap umbrella had broken weeks ago, and she hadn't had time to replace it. She made do with the hood of her thin jacket, arriving at work damp most mornings. Mrs. Chen noticed, of course. The older woman noticed everything. "You need a proper coat," she said one morning, her tone suggesting this was a personal failing rather than a financial impossibility. "You'll catch pneumonia." "I'm fine," Elena said automatically. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." The head housekeeper studied her with dark, unreadable eyes. "There are spare jackets in the staff room. Second cabinet. Take one." It wasn't a suggestion. Elena nodded and murmured her thanks, though she knew the spare jackets were probably Mrs. Chen's own cast-offs. The older woman had a prickly way of being kind that made it hard to refuse. The jacket was too large but warm. Elena wore it gratefully, telling herself she'd return it at the end of the season, knowing Mrs. Chen would never take it back. Small mercies in a world that offered few. The rain continued through the week, turning the mansion's garden into a muddy sprawl and making the marble floors treacherous. The housekeeping staff spent extra time setting out mats and warning the security personnel about the slick surfaces. Victor Romano seemed unaffected by the weather. He came and went on his usual schedule, driven in cars with tinted windows, surrounded by men who looked like they'd been carved from granite. Elena watched sometimes from upper windows, safe in her invisibility, wondering what it must be like to move through the world that protected. She never wondered for long. That kind of thinking led nowhere useful. On Friday of that week, Elena's shift ended at 2 as usual. She clocked out, changed from her uniform into street clothes, jeans and a sweater worn thin at the elbows, and headed for the service entrance. The rain had picked up, coming down in sheets that turned the city gray. "You walking to the train?" Rosa asked, pulling on her own coat. "I can share my umbrella part of the way." "I'm going the other direction," Elena lied. She didn't want company, didn't want to make small talk when her head was pounding, and she had another 6 hours of work ahead of her at the hospital. "But thank you." Rosa nodded, understanding or at least not pressing. "Stay dry, chica." Elena stepped out into the rain and immediately regretted declining the umbrella. The water came down so hard it stung, soaking through Mrs. Chen's borrowed jacket in seconds. She pulled the hood tighter and started walking, head down, focused on getting to the subway station 8 blocks away. The Upper East Side at 2 in the afternoon was relatively empty. Most people were at work or school. The few pedestrians she passed were hurrying like she was, hunched against the weather. Elena navigated by memory more than sight, her vision limited to the patch of sidewalk directly in front of her feet. She didn't see them until it was too late. 2 men stepped out from a recessed doorway as she passed. Elena's instincts screamed at her to run, but her body was already moving forward, momentum carrying her into their orbit. One of them grabbed her arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Hey there, sweetheart," he said, his voice almost friendly. "We need to have a little chat." Elena tried to pull away, her heart suddenly thundering. "I don't have any money. Please, just—" "We don't want your money." The second man moved to block her escape. He was bigger than the first, wearing a leather jacket that rain beaded off. His face was scarred, his eyes flat. "We want you to deliver a message." Her mind went blank with panic. I don't know what you mean. You work at the Romano place." It wasn't a question. The first man still had her arm, his grip tightening. "We know. We've been watching. You're nobody special, which makes you perfect." They'd been watching. How long? How many times had they seen her walking this route? Elena's stomach lurched with terror, and something worse, the horrible realization that her invisibility had failed in the worst possible way. "I don't know anything," she said desperately. "I'm just a housekeeper. I clean, that's all. I don't know Mr. Romano. That's the point." The bigger man smiled, and it was the worst thing Elena had ever seen. "You're nobody. So when Romano finds out what happened to you, he'll know it wasn't personal, just business." The first punch caught her in the stomach, driving the air from her lungs. Elena doubled over, gasping, and the second blow caught her across the face. Pain exploded through her cheekbone, bright and nauseating. She tried to scream, but the bigger man clamped a hand over her mouth, muffling the sound. "Message is simple," he said against her ear, his breath hot and sour. "Tell Victor Romano that the Calabrese family remembers. Tell him we're done waiting. Tell him he doesn't own this city anymore." They hit her again and again, methodical, efficient, the kind of beating meant to hurt but not kill. Elena stopped trying to fight after the first few blows. She went limp, letting them hold her up, praying it would end soon. It felt like hours. It was probably minutes. When they finally let her drop to the sidewalk, the rain immediately soaked through her clothes, mixing with the blood running from her nose, her split lip, the gash above her eyebrow. One of them kicked her ribs, not hard enough to break anything, but hard enough to make her curl into a ball. "Remember the message," the first man said. "Calabrese family, we're done waiting." Then they were gone, footsteps receding into the rain-soaked afternoon. Elena lay on the cold concrete, gasping, her body a symphony of pain. Her vision swam, her ears rang, blood pooled in her mouth, tasting of copper and terror. She needed to move. She knew she needed to move. If she stayed here, they might come back, or someone else might find her, or the police might get involved, and she couldn't afford that, couldn't risk questions, couldn't... Her phone. She needed her phone. It took 3 tries to get her hand into her pocket. The screen was cracked. Must have happened when she fell. But it still worked. Her fingers shook so badly she could barely unlock it. Who did she call? 911. Maya? The mansion? The mansion. Mrs. Chen had said Victor Romano's security was her security, had said his privacy was absolute, had said... Elena's vision grayed at the edges. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering to the wet sidewalk. She tried to grab it, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Everything hurt. Everything was wrong. She closed her eyes, just for a moment, just to rest. When she opened them again, the rain was still falling, the sky was still gray, and Elena Cross made a decision that would change everything. She pulled herself to her feet. It took 3 tries, and she had to use the building wall for support, but she managed. Her ribs screamed, her face throbbed. She could barely see out of her left eye, which was already swelling shut. But she could walk, barely. The subway station was 8 blocks away. The hospital, her evening job, was in Queens, but the Romano mansion was only 4 blocks back the way she'd come. Elena started walking. She didn't think about why, didn't let herself question the decision. She just put one foot in front of the other, leaning on walls when she needed to, stopping twice to vomit into gutters. The rain washed the blood from her face almost as fast as it flowed, painting the sidewalk pink. People passed her. Some stared. None stopped. This was New York. People minded their own business. The mansion appeared through the rain like a fortress, its limestone walls dark with water. Elena stumbled to the service entrance, her fingers so numb she could barely work the keycard. It took 4 tries to punch in the code. The lock clicked. She pulled the door open and half fell into the narrow hallway beyond. Mrs. Chen was there instantly, her sharp intake of breath the only sign of shock she allowed herself. Dios mío, Rosa breathed from somewhere behind her. Elena, what happened? I need... Elena's voice came out as a rasp. Her throat was raw from vomiting, from fear, from everything. I need to deliver a message. To Mr. Romano. You need a hospital, Mrs. Chen snapped, already reaching for her phone. Rosa, call 911. Elena, sit down before you fall down. No! The word came out sharper than Elena intended. She grabbed Mrs. Chen's wrist, her bloody fingers staining the older woman's sleeve. No police, no hospital, please, I just need... They said to tell Mr. Romano, Calabrese family. They said... The air in the hallway changed. Elena felt it before she saw him, a shift in pressure, in temperature, in the fundamental nature of the space. Victor Romano stood at the end of the corridor, absolutely still, his dark eyes fixed on Elena's broken face. For 11 months, she'd been invisible. For 11 months, he'd looked through her like she was glass. He was seeing her now. What, he said, his voice soft and more terrifying than any shout, happened to my housekeeper? The words hung in the air like a blade suspended by thread. Elena felt the weight of Victor Romano's attention. Not just his eyes, but his entire being focused on her with an intensity that made the pain in her ribs feel almost secondary. She'd spent 11 months trying to avoid this exact moment, and now here it was, unavoidable and terrifying. Mr. Romano, I can explain. Mrs. Chen started, but Victor raised one hand, silencing her without even glancing in her direction. I asked her. His eyes never left Elena's face. What happened? Elena's knees threatened to give out. She locked them, swaying slightly, tasting blood. 2 men. They were waiting. Outside, they said to give you a message. Something flickered across Victor's face. Too quick to name, gone before Elena could process it. He moved toward her with a predator's fluid grace, each step deliberate. When he stopped, he was close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the silver threading through the dark hair at his temples. What message? His voice remained soft, but Elena heard the steel beneath it, heard something darker, something that made the men who'd hurt her seem like amateurs playing at violence. Calabrese family. The words came out broken, punctuated by the hitch in her breathing. They said to tell you they're done waiting, that you don't own this city anymore. The temperature in the hallway dropped 10 degrees. Victor stood perfectly still for a heartbeat, 2, 3. Then he turned his head fractionally toward where Mrs. Chen stood frozen. Get Marcus, now! The head housekeeper disappeared without a word. Rosa remained pressed against the wall, her eyes wide, one hand covering her mouth. Victor looked back at Elena. Did they say anything else? They said... Elena's voice cracked. She had to swallow blood before she could continue. They said I was nobody. That's why they chose me. So you'd know it wasn't personal, just business. A muscle jumped in Victor's jaw. Nobody. He repeated the word like he was tasting it, testing it, finding it wanting. They called you nobody. Elena nodded, and the movement sent fresh pain lancing through her skull. The edges of her vision started to gray again. She felt herself tilting, the floor rushing up to meet her. Victor caught her before she hit the ground. One moment she was falling, the next she was being lifted, effortlessly, like she weighed nothing, cradled against a chest that felt like stone beneath expensive fabric. The scent of his cologne cut through the rain and blood,
cedar and something darker, more complex. Don't, she tried to say, because this was wrong. All of this was wrong. She wasn't supposed to be touched by Victor Romano. She wasn't supposed to exist in his world as anything more than a shadow.
I can walk. I just need...
You need a doctor. He was already moving, carrying her down the hallway. Rosa, call Dr. Chen. Tell him it's urgent. Mrs. Chen, clear the east sitting room. The staff scattered like leaves in wind. Elena tried to protest again, but her body had apparently decided it was done listening to her. The pain was becoming something distant, abstract. Shock, probably. She'd read about shock in one of Maya's textbooks. Maya. God, what would she tell Maya? Victor shouldered through a door into a room Elena had cleaned 100 times but never truly seen. The east sitting room was decorated in shades of cream and gold, with furniture that belonged in a museum. He set her down on a velvet sofa with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man his size, from a man with his reputation. Stay still, he said, though Elena couldn't have moved if she wanted to. The doctor is on his way. She watched him step back, watched him pull out his phone with hands that were absolutely steady, watched him place a call that would, she somehow knew, end with people dying. Marcus, east sitting room, now. A pause. I don't care if he's in the middle of a meeting. Now. He ended the call and made another. Anthony, we have a problem. The Calabrese family just made a statement. Yes, I'm sure. They used one of my staff to deliver it. His eyes cut to Elena. They put their hands on someone under my roof. The way he said it, like that was the unforgivable sin, not the message itself but the method of delivery, made Elena's skin prickle. She'd heard rumors, of course, all the housekeeping staff had. Whispers about what happened to people who crossed Victor Romano, about bodies found in the East River, about witnesses who suddenly couldn't remember what they'd seen. She told herself those were just stories, exaggerations, urban legends. Looking at Victor's face as he spoke into the phone, she realized how naive she'd been. I want them found, he said, each word precise as a scalpel cut. I want to know where they are, who they're working for, and what they had for breakfast this morning. You have 2 hours. He listened for a moment. I don't care what it costs. Make it happen. The door burst open and a man Elena vaguely recognized from her cleaning rounds appeared. Marcus, apparently. He was shorter than Victor, but built like a tank, with close-cropped gray hair and a face that had seen violence and dealt it back with interest. His eyes went immediately to Elena, cataloging her injuries with professional detachment. Christ, he muttered. They did this? Calabrese men. 2 of them. Broad daylight, 4 blocks from here. Victor's voice had gone colder than the October rain. They've been watching the house. They knew her schedule. They knew her route. Marcus's jaw tightened. We'll find them. That's not enough. Victor turned to fully face his security chief, and Elena saw what she supposed most people never lived to see. Victor Romano's mask dropping completely. What lay beneath was fury, pure, controlled, and absolutely lethal. They touched someone under my protection. They used her to send a message. They think I'm weak enough to let that slide. You want me to assemble the team? I want you to assemble everyone, every man we have on the street. I want the Calabrese family to understand they made a mistake. Victor paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter. Somehow, that made it worse. By morning, I want them to regret she was ever born. Elena's breath caught. No, please, I don't want... Both men looked at her as if they'd forgotten she could speak. Victor's expression softened fractionally, though soft was relative when applied to a face like his. This isn't about what you want, he said, not unkindly. This is about principle, about rules. They broke mine. But I'm fine, Elena lied, even as blood continued to seep from the cut above her eyebrow. I can go home. I won't say anything to anyone. I'll forget this happened. Please, You think this is about you? Victor moved closer, crouching so they were eye level. This close, Elena could see that his eyes weren't truly black, but the deepest brown, almost purple in certain lights. They could have left a note, could have made a phone call, could have burned down one of my businesses. Instead, they chose to hurt someone who can't fight back, someone who was walking home from work, Someone... He stopped, something unreadable crossing his face. They chose someone innocent. I'm nobody, Elena said, echoing what the men had told her. That's what they said. I'm nobody, so it doesn't matter. Victor's hand came up, slowly, giving her time to flinch away if she wanted, and brush the hair back from her injured face. His touch was careful, clinical, but Elena felt it like electricity. You work in my house, he said quietly. You're under my roof, under my protection. That makes you somebody. That makes you mine to protect. He stood, turning back to Marcus. Find them. I'll handle the rest. Marcus nodded and left without another word. The door clicked shut, leaving Elena alone with Victor Romano and the terrible understanding that she'd just become the catalyst for something unstoppable. The doctor arrived 20 minutes later, a thin Chinese man in his 70s who carried a leather bag that looked older than Elena. Dr. Chen, apparently no relation to Mrs. Chen despite the shared surname, examined her with quick efficiency while Victor watched from across the room. Bruised ribs, possible minor fracture, the doctor announced, his fingers probing Elena's side with impersonal precision. Facial contusions, minor concussion likely. The cut above the eyebrow will need stitches. He looked at Victor. She should be in a hospital for observation. No hospitals, Victor said immediately. No police reports. Treat her here. Dr. Chen didn't argue. Elena supposed he was used to providing medical care without asking questions. He cleaned her wounds with stinging antiseptic, applied butterfly bandages to smaller cuts, and stitched the gash above her eyebrow with tiny, precise sutures. Elena barely felt it. The local anesthetic helped, but mostly she was numb from something deeper than physical pain. The ribs will heal on their own, Dr. Chen said, packing his supplies. Ice for the swelling, rest for the concussion, no strenuous activity for at least a week, preferably 2. I have work, Elena said automatically. I have another shift tonight. I can't... You're not going anywhere. Victor's tone brooked no argument. Mrs. Chen, prepare a guest room on the 2nd floor. Elena will be staying here until she's recovered. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, Elena tried to sit up, gasping as her ribs protested. No, I can't. My sister, she'll worry. I need to call her. You need to rest. Victor moved to the sofa, not quite sitting but perching on the arm with casual authority. Give me your sister's number. I'll have someone explain that you're safe. She can't know about this. Panic edged into Elena's voice. She can't know what happened. She'll want to call the police or she'll try to come here, or... Then what do you want her to know? Elena's mind raced, trying to think through the fog of pain and shock and whatever painkiller Dr. Chen had given her. Tell her there was a gas leak at my apartment building, that I'm staying with a friend from work. Tell her I'll call her tomorrow. Victor studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone and typed something. Done. One of my people will contact her within the hour. How will they? I have your employment file. Your emergency contacts are listed. He said it matter-of-factly, like of course he'd have access to her personal information. Like of course his reach extended that far. She'll be told exactly what you said, nothing more. Elena wanted to argue, but exhaustion was pulling her under like a riptide. The adrenaline that had carried her back to the mansion was gone, leaving only bone-deep weariness. Her eyelids felt heavy, her thoughts moved like molasses. You should sleep, Victor said, and it wasn't a suggestion. Mrs. Chen will stay with you. If you need anything, tell her. He stood to leave, and Elena heard herself say, Why? Victor paused, looking back. Why what? Why do you care? The words came out slurred, the painkillers dragging her toward unconsciousness. You didn't even know my name until today. I'm just a housekeeper. I'm nobody. Something flashed across his face. Anger, maybe, or something else. Something that looked almost like pain. You keep using that word, he said softly. Nobody. Like it absolves them. Like it makes what they did acceptable. He moved back toward her, and Elena had to tilt her head to meet his eyes. Every person in my employ is somebody. Every person who works in my house, who trusts me to keep them safe. They matter. You matter. And the fact that you can't see that... He stopped, shook his head.
Get some rest. We'll talk when you're healed." He left before Elena could respond. Mrs. Chen appeared moments later with blankets and pillows, efficiently transforming the sofa into something resembling a bed. She helped Elena lie down, adjusting pillows to support her injured ribs. "Mr. Romano is not a patient man," the older woman said, smoothing the blanket over Elena. "But he is a man of principle. When he says you are under his protection, he means it absolutely." "I don't understand," Elena mumbled, already halfway to sleep. "I don't understand any of this." Mrs. Chen's expression softened slightly, the closest Elena had ever seen her come to genuine warmth. "You don't need to understand. You just need to rest and heal. The rest—" She glanced toward the door Victor had exited through. "The rest is already in motion." Elena wanted to ask what that meant, but her body had reached its limit. She felt herself sliding into darkness, consciousness fragmenting into pieces she couldn't hold together. Her last coherent thought was that she should be afraid. She was inside Victor Romano's inner sanctum, caught in the middle of something violent and dangerous, and she should absolutely be terrified. Instead, wrapped in expensive blankets in a room that cost more than her entire life, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. She felt safe. When Elena woke, late afternoon light filtered through curtains she didn't recognize. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't place where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The sounds were wrong. Even the air smelled wrong, like money and old wood instead of the mildew that plagued her Bronx apartment. Then she tried to sit up, and her ribs reminded her exactly what had happened. "Easy." A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "You've been out for 6 hours. Don't push it." Elena turned her head carefully. A woman sat in an armchair near the window, mid-30s, blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, wearing jeans and a sweater that probably cost more than Elena's monthly rent. She was beautiful in that polished, intimidating way that certain wealthy women achieved, like she'd never had a bad hair day or skin breakout in her life. "Who are you?" Elena's voice came out rough, her throat dry. The woman stood, bringing over a glass of water. "Christine Holloway. I work for Mr. Romano, legal department. He asked me to stay with you." Elena accepted the water gratefully, sipping slowly. "Where's Mrs. Chen?" "She went home an hour ago. Her shift ended." Christine settled back into the chair. "How are you feeling?" "Like I was hit by a truck." Elena set the empty glass on the side table, wincing at the movement. "What time is it?" "Almost 7. You missed the excitement." Something in Christine's tone made Elena's stomach clench. "What excitement?" Christine's smile was sharp as glass. "Mr. Romano found the men who hurt you, both of them. They're currently having a very educational conversation about the importance of respecting other people's property." The casual way she said it, like she was discussing the weather or lunch plans, made Elena's skin crawl. "Property?" "Poor choice of words," Christine acknowledged, though she didn't look particularly sorry. "What I mean is they're learning that actions have consequences. Specifically, that using an innocent woman to send a message to Victor Romano is the kind of mistake you don't survive." Elena's breath caught. "Survive? Are you saying he's going to kill them?" "I'm saying they made a choice, and now they're living with it." Christine crossed her legs, utterly relaxed. "Or not living with it, as the case may be. Not really my department." "Jesus." Elena closed her eyes, nausea rising. "I didn't want this. I didn't ask for people to die because of me." "They're not dying because of you." Christine's voice went hard. "They're dying because they attacked someone under Victor Romano's protection. They're dying because they thought they could use violence against a defenseless woman to make a point. They're dying because they broke the rules." "What rules?" Elena opened her eyes, staring at the ornate ceiling. "I don't understand any of this. I just clean houses. I just want to pay my bills and take care of my sister and live my life. I don't want to be part of whatever this is." "Too late." Christine stood, moving to the window. "You became part of it the moment you took the job here. The moment you walked through Victor Romano's door. Whether you understood that or not doesn't change the reality." Elena wanted to argue, but she was too tired and in too much pain. Instead, she asked, "What happens now?" "Now you rest, you heal.
Mr. Romano has arranged for your medical expenses to be covered. Your rent for next month has been paid. Your sister has been contacted and reassured. Your job at the hospital has been notified that you're taking medical leave. Christine ticked off each point on her fingers. Everything has been handled. I didn't ask him to do any of that. You didn't have to ask. That's the point. Christine turned from the window, backlit by the dying sun. Victor Romano takes care of his people. That's not charity. That's obligation. You work in his house, you're his responsibility. Simple as that. Nothing about this felt simple, but Elena was too exhausted to argue. Instead, she asked the question that had been gnawing at her since she woke. Does he always... if someone had attacked Rosa or Yuki, would he burn down half the city to make a point? Christine's smile returned. Absolutely. This isn't special treatment, Elena. This is just how Victor operates. Someone hurts his people, he makes them regret being born. Someone threatens his authority, he reminds them why they should be afraid. That's insane. That's survival. Christine moved toward the door. You're in a world now where reputation is everything, where showing weakness gets you killed. Victor can't afford to let an attack on his staff go unanswered. If he did, every two-bit crew in the city would think they could take shots at him. She paused in the doorway, looking back. Get some rest. There's soup in the kitchen if you're hungry, Mrs.
Chen will be back in the morning to check on you. Wait. Elena struggled to sit up despite the pain. What about the Calabrese family? What about their message? Christine's expression went cold. The Calabrese family is learning a very painful lesson about the difference between wanting something and being strong enough to take it. By tomorrow morning, the message will be very clear. Victor Romano still owns this city, and anyone who thinks otherwise is welcome to test that theory. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Elena sat in the dimming light, trying to process everything, trying to understand how a simple walk home from work had turned into this. People were going to die because of her. Maybe already had. The thought should have horrified her more than it did. Maybe she was in shock. Maybe the painkillers were still working. Or maybe, and this was the thought that truly frightened her, maybe she was angrier than she'd let herself acknowledge. Those men had hurt her, had terrorized her, had used her like she was nothing, like her pain and fear were just tools to send a message to someone more important. Was it wrong that part of her, small, vicious, and growing, was glad they were facing consequences? Elena didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure she wanted one. The next few hours passed in a haze of sleep and waking. Staff members she'd never seen before brought food she barely touched. The room grew dark, then light again as someone came in to turn on lamps. Her ribs ached, her face throbbed, but the pain was manageable, and beneath it was that strange sense of security that shouldn't exist but did. Around midnight she heard voices in the hallway. Low, male, speaking in tones too quiet to make out words. Then footsteps approaching her door. Victor Romano entered without knocking, followed by Marcus. Both men looked like they'd aged a decade since she'd seen them last. Victor's suit was rumpled, his tie gone, his sleeves rolled up. There was something dark on his right cuff that Elena tried very hard not to identify. "You're awake," he said, stating the obvious. "Hard to sleep when you know people are dying because you got jumped." The words came out sharper than Elena intended, but she didn't take them back. Victor exchanged a glance with Marcus, who quietly excused himself and left. Then Victor moved further into the room, pulling the chair Christine had used closer to the sofa. "They're not dead," he said, sitting with the careful movements of someone who'd been in a fight. "Not yet, but they will be, probably within the hour." Elena's breath caught. "Can't you, I don't know, just let them go? Make your point without killing them?" "My point is that they die." Victor's voice was patient, like he was explaining something to a child. "That's the only point that matters, the only message that will be heard." "So I just have to live with that? Knowing people died because of me?" "They're not dying because of you." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, dark eyes intense. "How many times do I have to say this? They're dying because they made a choice. They chose to attack you. They chose to use you as a weapon against me. They chose violence against someone who couldn't defend herself." "I'm not your property," Elena said, echoing Christine's earlier slip.
I'm not something you have to avenge. No. Victor's jaw tightened. You're a person who works in my house, who I see every day, who makes my home function. You're a person who has never done anything to deserve what happened to her. And the men who hurt you need to understand that there are consequences for their actions. Even if those consequences are death? Especially then. He sat back, running a hand through his hair. You think I'm a monster. That's fine. Most people do. But I have rules, Elena. Lines I don't cross. And one of those lines is protecting the people who work for me, who trust me, who deserve to feel safe in their jobs. Elena stared at him, this man who lived in a world so far removed from hers, they might as well be different species. I just wanted to pay my bills, she said quietly. I just wanted to keep my sister in school and keep the debt collectors from taking what little we have. I didn't want any of this. I know. Something softened in Victor's expression. But you have it anyway, and now we have to deal with it. We? You're under my protection now, whether you want it or not. He stood, moving toward the door. Get some rest. In the morning, we'll talk about what comes next. What does come next? Elena asked, suddenly afraid of the answer. Victor paused, looking back over his shoulder. In the lamplight, his face was all shadows and sharp edges, but his eyes held something that might have been regret. That depends, he said quietly, on whether you decide to run or stay. He left before she could ask what he meant, before she could ask if running was even an option anymore. Elena lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the mansion settling around her. Somewhere in this building, Victor Romano was doing things she didn't want to imagine, making examples, sending messages written in blood. And she was here, safe and protected, while people died because they'd made the mistake of using her as a pawn. The worst part, the part that kept her awake long into the night, was that she couldn't quite make herself feel sorry about it. Elena woke to pale morning light and the sound of rain against windows. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot everything that had happened. Then she moved, her ribs protested, and the previous day crashed back with brutal clarity. The door opened quietly. Mrs. Chen entered carrying a breakfast tray, her expression as unreadable as ever. You're awake. Good. She set the tray on a side table. Toast, soft scrambled eggs, fruit, orange juice. Dr. Chen will be here in an hour to check your progress. You should eat first. Elena pushed herself upright slowly, every muscle protesting. Mrs. Chen, I need to know what happened last night. Those men are no longer a concern. The older woman's tone was final. That's all you need to know. That's not all I need to know. Elena's voice came out stronger than she expected. People died because of me. I deserve to know the truth. Mrs. Chen studied her for a long moment, then sat in the chair Victor had occupied hours earlier. You want the truth? The truth is that 2 men who attacked a defenseless woman received exactly what they deserved. The truth is that Mr. Romano sent a message to the Calabrese family that will prevent further violence. The truth is that you are alive and safe, which is more than you would have been if those men had decided you were a loose end worth tying up. The words hit Elena like cold water. What do you mean? You think they would have let you live after delivering their message? You think they wouldn't have come back to make sure you couldn't identify them? Mrs. Chen's expression was hard. You were never going to walk away from this unscathed child. The only question was whether you'd be dead in an alley or protected in this house. Elena's hands trembled. She hadn't thought about that, hadn't let herself consider that the attack might have been more than just a message. Eat, Mrs. Chen said, standing. You'll need your strength for the conversation Mr. Romano wants to have with you. She left before Elena could ask what conversation, what Victor wanted to discuss. Elena stared at the breakfast tray, her stomach churning despite the appetizing smell. She forced herself to eat anyway, knowing Mrs. Chen was right about needing strength. An hour later, Dr. Chen arrived and examined her with the same clinical efficiency as before. The swelling on her face had gone down slightly. The bruises were ripening into spectacular shades of purple and yellow. Her ribs were tender but not fractured. You're healing well, he announced. Continue resting. No heavy lifting for another week at minimum. After he left, Elena found herself alone with her thoughts. She should call Maya. should reassure her sister personally. But what would she say? How could she explain any of this without revealing the truth? The morning stretched into afternoon. Staff members brought lunch, then tea. Elena caught glimpses of the mansion's daily operations through her open door. Security personnel moving with purpose. Someone speaking rapid Italian on a phone. The distant sound of voices and heated discussion. She was trying to decide if she could make it to the bathroom on her own when Victor appeared in her doorway. He looked different in daylight, or maybe Elena was just seeing him clearly for the first time. He'd changed clothes, dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. His hair was damp, recently showered, but there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of a sleepless night. "How are you feeling?" he asked, not entering the room. "Like I got beat up and then spent the night in a stranger's house while people died." Elena met his gaze directly. "So not great, honestly." A ghost of something that might have been amusement crossed his face. "At least you're honest." He moved into the room but didn't sit. Instead, he stood near the window, backlit by gray afternoon light. "We need to talk about your situation." "What situation?" "The one where the Calabrese family now knows your face, knows your name, knows exactly how to hurt me if they want to try again." Victor's voice was matter-of-fact, but Elena heard the weight beneath it. "You can't go back to your old life. Not safely." The words felt like a punch to her already bruised ribs. "What are you talking about? Of course I can. I have to. My sister, my jobs. Your sister is being protected as we speak. I have people watching her apartment, her school, everywhere she goes. The hospital has been told you're on extended medical leave, and your cleaning job." He paused. "That position no longer exists." Elena stared at him, not comprehending. "You fired me?" "I'm offering you a different position." Victor turned from the window to face her directly. "One that comes with security, protection, a salary 3 times what you were making combined from both jobs." "Doing what?" "Whatever you want." He moved closer, his expression serious. "You want to finish school? I'll pay for it. You want to work? I'll find you something in one of my legitimate businesses. You want to do nothing but heal and figure out what you actually want from life? That's fine too." Elena's head spun. "Why would you do that? I'm nobody. I'm just—" "If you call yourself nobody one more time, I'm going to lose my temper." Victor's voice went hard. "You are a person who got hurt because of me. Because you worked in my house, because animals thought they could use you as a weapon. That makes you my responsibility." "I don't want to be your responsibility." "Too bad." He sat on the edge of the sofa, close enough that Elena could see the fine lines around his eyes, the slight scar on his left cheekbone. "You don't get to choose. None of us do. The Calabrese family made their move." I responded. "Now we deal with the consequences." "What consequences?" Elena asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Victor was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "The 2 men who attacked you are dead. Their bodies were found this morning in Calabrese territory with a very clear message about what happens when you touch my people. The Calabrese family is now making noise about retaliation, about how I've overstepped, about how this means war." "So you're saying I started a war?" "No. I'm saying they started a war the moment they decided to use an innocent woman as a message. I just finished it." Victor's jaw tightened. "But wars have casualties. And right now, you're a potential casualty if you go back to your regular life." Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes. She refused to let them fall. "So what? I just live here forever? Become some kind of what? Your property? Your obligation? You become someone under my protection." Victor's voice softened slightly. "Look, I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you had a life, a plan, a future that didn't include me or my world. But that future ended yesterday in an alley. Now we build a new one." "I don't want a new one." The tears came anyway, hot and angry. "I want my old life back. I want to work my jobs and pay my debts and take care of Maya and just be normal. Is that too much to ask?" "Yes." The word was gentle but absolute. "Because that life was never real. You were one paycheck from disaster, one emergency from losing everything, one bad day from homelessness. That's not a life. That's survival. Elena wiped at her face angrily. And what you're offering is better? What I'm offering is safety, security, the chance to actually live instead of just surviving. Victor stood, putting distance between them. But it comes with strings. I won't lie about that. What strings? You stay close. You stay protected. You don't do anything that puts you in danger. He turned back to face her. And you accept that your life is connected to mine now, whether we like it or not. The weight of it settled over Elena like a shroud. She thought about Maya, about her sister's dreams of teaching, about the apartment in the Bronx that was falling apart, about the debt that would follow her forever, about how tired she was of being afraid. What about Maya? She asked quietly. She stays protected too. I've already moved security to her building. She doesn't know it, but she's safe. Victor pulled his phone from his pocket, tapped something, then showed Elena the screen. This is the team watching her right now. Elena saw a grainy security feed showing Maya walking across a college campus, backpack slung over one shoulder, completely oblivious to the two men trailing at a discreet distance. You're having my sister followed. I'm having her protected. Victor pocketed the phone. There's a difference. Is there? Elena heard the bitterness in her own voice. Seems like I don't get choices anymore. Seems like you've just decided how my life is going to go. You have choices. Victor's tone went hard again. You can accept my protection and the safety it provides. Or you can walk out that door right now, go back to your apartment, and hope the Calabrese family doesn't decide to make another statement using you or your sister. Those are your choices. It wasn't a choice at all, and they both knew it. Elena closed her eyes, exhaustion and pain and fear all crashing together. I hate this. I hate all of this. I know. Victor's voice came from closer than she expected. She opened her eyes to find him crouched beside the sofa, his dark eyes level with hers. But hate doesn't change reality, and reality is that you need protection right now. Let me provide it. For how long? As long as it takes. He stood, moving back toward the door. The Calabrese situation will resolve itself one way or another. When it does, when it's safe, you can decide what you want to do next. But until then, you stay here. You stay safe. And Maya? I'll handle Maya. Victor paused in the doorway. She thinks you're staying with a friend because of the gas leak, remember? We'll maintain that story for now. You can call her, video chat, whatever you need to keep her from worrying. But she doesn't come here, and you don't go to her. Not yet. Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Get some rest, Victor said. Tomorrow, when you're feeling stronger, we'll talk about what comes next. About what you actually want, beyond just survival. He left, and Elena was alone again with her thoughts and the sound of rain. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Elena called Maya, forced brightness into her voice as she explained about the gas leak and staying with Christine from work, a friend Maya had never met. Her sister accepted the story easily, too wrapped up in studying for midterms to ask difficult questions. Just take care of yourself, Maya said, and don't worry about anything here. I'm fine. If only she knew, Elena thought, that fine now included armed guards she couldn't see. That evening, Christine returned with clothes in Elena's size. Soft sweaters, comfortable pants, nothing like the threadbare wardrobe Elena had left behind. Victor thought you might want something clean to wear, Christine said, setting shopping bags on a chair. Everything's been laundered. Should fit. Elena fingered the fabric of a cashmere sweater, wondering what it cost. More than she made in a month, probably. This is too much. Get used to it. Christine settled into her usual chair. Victor doesn't do anything halfway. When he decides to protect someone, he commits completely. Is that what this is? Protection? What else would it be? Elena didn't have an answer. She changed the subject. What happened with the Calabrese family? Victor said something about retaliation. Christine's expression went carefully neutral. That's not really my area. I handle legal matters, not operational ones. But you know something. I know that the Calabrese family is making noise about Victor overstepping, about how killing their men was a declaration of war, about how they won't let it stand. Christine examined her nails.
I also know that every other family in the city is watching to see how this plays out, whether Victor still has the strength to hold his territory. So I did start a war. No. Christine's voice went sharp. They started it. You were just the excuse they used. If it hadn't been you, it would have been something else. The Calabrese family has been pushing boundaries for months, testing Victor's limits. This was inevitable. Elena absorbed that, trying to understand the rules of a world she'd never wanted to enter. What happens if they retaliate? Then Victor responds, and it escalates until one side backs down or gets destroyed. Christine stood, moving to the window. That's how this works. Show weakness, and everyone pounces. Show strength, and they remember why they're afraid. That's insane. That's the life. Christine turned back, her expression almost sympathetic. Look, I get it. You didn't ask for this. You just wanted to work and pay your bills and take care of your sister. But you're in it now, whether you like it or not. So you can either accept that and let Victor protect you, or you can fight it and probably end up dead. The bluntness was almost refreshing after Victor's careful explanations. How long have you worked for him? Elena asked. 5 years. I handle contracts, acquisitions, legal disputes for his legitimate businesses. Christine smiled slightly. Which is most of them, actually. Whatever you've heard about Victor Romano, remember that he's also a successful businessman. Real estate, construction, restaurants. The illegal stuff is maybe 20% of his operation. But that 20% is what could get me killed. That 20% is also what keeps the other 80% running smoothly. Christine moved toward the door. Welcome to the gray areas, Elena. Try to get comfortable. After she left, Elena lay in the growing darkness, thinking about gray areas and choices that weren't really choices. Thinking about her sister, protected by men with guns. Thinking about Victor Romano and the careful way he'd crouched beside her, making promises she wasn't sure she wanted him to keep. Mostly, she thought about the future she'd had yesterday, precarious but hers, and the future she had now, safe but owned by a man she barely knew. She wasn't sure which terrified her more. Night fell completely. Elena dozed, woke, dozed again. Around midnight, she heard voices in the hall, urgent, tense, then footsteps approaching her door. Victor entered without knocking, Marcus right behind him. Both men looked grim. We have a problem, Victor said without preamble. The Calabrese family just made their move. Elena's heart stuttered. What kind of move? They hit one of my warehouses, burned it to the ground. Victor's voice was flat, emotionless. 3 of my people were inside. They didn't make it out. The room tilted. 3 people. Dead. Because of a war that started with her. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Victor moved closer, his expression softening slightly when he saw her face. This isn't on you. This is on them. How is it not on me? If I hadn't been there, if they hadn't attacked me, then they would have found another excuse. Victor sat on the edge of the sofa. Elena, listen to me. The Calabrese family has been looking for an opening for months. They want my territory, my businesses. You were just convenient. If it hadn't been you, it would have been something else. 3 people are dead, and more will die before this is over. Victor's jaw tightened. That's the reality of this world. That's what I'm trying to protect you from. Marcus cleared his throat. Boss, we need to respond. They're waiting to see what you'll do. I know. Victor stood, his body radiating controlled violence. Gather the captains. I want everyone assembled in an hour. What are you going to do? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Victor looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something ancient and unforgiving. I'm going to remind the Calabrese family why my father ruled this city for 30 years, and why I've held it for 10 more. More people are going to die. Yes, he didn't lie, didn't try to soften it, but they won't be my people. Not if I can help it. He left with Marcus, their footsteps echoing down the hallway. Elena sat in the darkness, listening to the mansion come alive with purpose. Men arriving, voices raised in discussion, the sound of weapons being checked, vehicles starting. She thought about the 3 people who'd died in the warehouse.
People with families, probably. With lives and dreams and futures that ended in fire. Because of a war she'd unwittingly triggered. Christine appeared sometime after 2 in the morning, looking exhausted. "You should be sleeping," she said, though she didn't look like she'd be following that advice herself. "Can't." Elena's voice was hoarse. "What's happening?" Victor's making his response. He's hitting 3 Calabrese locations simultaneously, sending a message that for every one of his people they kill, he'll take 3 of theirs. Christine sat heavily in her chair. "It's not pretty, but it's necessary." "How is more death necessary?" "Because if Victor doesn't respond overwhelming, every crew in the city will think he's weak, and weak gets you killed in this world." Christine rubbed her eyes. "I know you don't understand. I know this seems barbaric, but these are the rules Victor inherited, the rules he has to play by to survive. There has to be another way." "There isn't." Christine's voice was sad. "Believe me, if there was, Victor would take it. He's not a monster. He doesn't enjoy this. But he understands that mercy is weakness, and weakness is death." Elena wanted to argue, but she was too tired, too overwhelmed, too far out of her depth to even know where to start. "What happens after tonight?" she asked instead. "That depends on the Calabrese family. If they're smart, they'll back down. Recognize they picked a fight they can't win." Christine leaned back, closing her eyes. "If they're stupid, this escalates until one side is destroyed. And what about me? What's my role in all this?" Christine opened her eyes, looking at Elena with something like pity. "Your role is to be the reason Victor fights harder, the proof that people under his protection matter, the symbol of what happens when you attack the innocent." "I don't want to be a symbol." "None of us do." Christine stood, stretching. "But we rarely get what we want. We just get what we get, and we deal with it." She left, and Elena was alone again. She listened to the sounds of the mansion, imagining Victor somewhere in the city, orchestrating violence with the same calm precision he brought to everything else. 3 Calabrese locations. How many people would die in those strikes? How many families would be destroyed? How much blood would be spilled because 2 men had decided to use her as a message? The guilt threatened to drown her. Dawn came gray and cold. Elena must have slept at some point because she woke to find herself covered with a blanket she didn't remember pulling over herself. Her body ached, but differently now. The sharp pain of fresh injuries had settled into the deep throb of healing. The mansion was quiet, too quiet. Elena forced herself upright, testing her ribs. They protested, but held. She made her way slowly to the bathroom, avoiding her reflection in the mirror because she knew what she'd see. A woman who didn't recognize her own life anymore. When she emerged, Mrs. Chen was waiting with breakfast and a handful of newspapers. "Mr. Romano thought you should see these," the older woman said, setting them on a table. Elena picked up the top paper. The headline screamed, "Gang violence erupts in Manhattan." Below it, a story about 3 buildings burning simultaneously in the night, about casualties on both sides, about police investigating but making no arrests. The article never mentioned Victor Romano by name. It didn't have to. "Is he back?" Elena asked. "He returned an hour ago. He's in his study." Mrs. Chen paused. "He asked if you would join him when you're ready." Elena's stomach twisted. "I don't think—" "It wasn't a request." Mrs. Chen's tone was gentle but firm. "Eat first, then go to him." She left Elena alone with the newspapers and her breakfast. Elena forced herself to eat, reading between the lines of the articles. 6 Calabrese associates dead. 2 of Victor's people wounded but alive. Millions in property damage. All of it because she'd walked home from work in the rain. When she couldn't delay any longer, Elena made her way through the mansion to Victor's study. The door was open. He sat behind his desk, still wearing the same clothes from last night, staring at nothing. "You wanted to see me?" Elena said from the doorway. Victor looked up and she saw exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "Come in. Close the door." She obeyed, moving carefully into the room. Up close, she could see blood on his collar. Not much, but enough. Enough to know he'd been there, in the violence, not just orchestrating from a distance. 6 people died last night, he said without preamble.
6 Calabrese associates who probably had families, who probably thought they were just doing their jobs.
Elena's throat closed. I know, I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. Victor's voice was rough. Stop making this about you. It's not. How can it not be? This started because the Calabrese family got greedy, because they saw an opportunity and took it. You were just the excuse. He stood, moving to the window. But yes, 6 people are dead because I made an example, because I had to send a message that my people are protected, that attacks have consequences. Was it worth it? Elena asked quietly. Victor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper.
Ask me again when this is over. When I know if it worked, if they back down, or if this just keeps escalating. And if it keeps escalating, then more people die. He turned to face her. But they won't be you. They won't be your sister. They won't be my staff who trust me to keep them safe. That has to be enough. Elena moved closer, studying his face, seeing past the cold exterior to the man beneath, the one who carried the weight of every decision, every death, every consequence. You're not a monster, she said, surprising herself. Victor's laugh was bitter. Tell that to the 6 families burying their dead. I'm serious. A monster wouldn't care, wouldn't feel the weight of it. Elena gestured at his face, at the exhaustion, and something deeper. You feel it. Every death. Every choice. Feeling it doesn't make it better, doesn't bring them back. Victor leaned against his desk, suddenly looking older. It just means I get to live with what I've done. They stood in silence, 2 people from completely different worlds, bound together by violence neither had wanted. What happens now? Elena finally asked. Now we wait. Victor rubbed his eyes. Wait to see if the Calabrese family is smart enough to back down. Wait to see if my show of force was enough. Wait and see who blinks first. And me? You stay here. Stay safe. Stay protected. He met her gaze directly. Whether you want to or not. Elena nodded, because what else could she do? She was trapped in this now, caught in a web of violence and protection and choices that weren't really choices. But as she left Victor's study, heading back to her borrowed room in his fortress of a mansion, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. She might be trapped, but she was alive. She was safe. And for the first time in years, she wasn't alone in facing whatever came next. It wasn't the future she'd wanted. But maybe, just maybe, it was the one she needed. The waiting was worse than the violence had been. 3 days passed in a strange limbo, where Elena healed physically while the city held its breath. The Calabrese family made no immediate response to Victor's strikes, but their silence felt more threatening than action would have. It was the quiet before something bigger, something worse. Elena spent those days learning the rhythms of Victor's world. The mansion operated like a small city unto itself, with layers of staff and security she'd never noticed during her cleaning shifts. There were the visible guards at doors and gates, but also the invisible ones monitoring cameras, tracking movements, coordinating protection details for people like her sister, who had no idea they were being watched. Mrs. Chen brought meals at regular intervals, each one more elaborate than Elena could ever have afforded. Rosa and Yuki visited, bringing news from the outside world, careful to avoid mentioning the war everyone knew was brewing. Christine appeared each evening with updates on legitimate business, contracts signed, properties acquired, the mundane machinery of Victor's empire that had nothing to do with violence. But it was Victor himself who surprised Elena most. He checked on her twice daily, morning and evening, his questions always the same. How was she healing? Did she need anything? Was she comfortable? The conversations were brief, professional, but there was something in his eyes when he looked at her injuries, a flash of anger that never quite faded. On the 4th day, Elena's ribs had healed enough that she could move without gasping. The swelling on her face had receded to the point where she looked less like a boxing victim and more like someone who'd had a bad fall. Dr. Chen pronounced her well enough to move around the mansion, though he cautioned against anything strenuous. She found herself wandering, exploring spaces she'd only cleaned before. The library became her refuge. 3 floors of books in a dozen languages, comfortable chairs positioned near windows that overlooked the garden. She was reading there when Victor found her late that afternoon. You like to read, he said from the doorway, making it a statement rather than a question. Elena looked up from a worn copy of Jane Eyre. When I have time, which hasn't been often. Victor moved into the room, his footsteps silent on Persian rugs she'd vacuumed 100 times. He looked different today, she realized, less exhausted, more like the controlled, dangerous man she'd glimpsed in those early months of invisibility. What did you want to be? He asked, settling into a chair across from hers, before survival took over. The question caught her off guard. What makes you think I wanted to be anything? Everyone wants to be something. Victor gestured at the book in her hands. You read Bronte. You worked 2 jobs to put your sister through school. You're smart, Elena. So what did you want before the world got in the way? Elena closed the book, running her fingers over the embossed cover. A teacher, like Maya wants to be. I thought I'd study literature, work in a high school, maybe make a difference for kids who needed someone to believe in them. What stopped you? My mother got sick my sophomore year of college. The bills started piling up faster than I could work. I dropped out to take care of her and never went back. Elena's voice was steady, but the old pain flickered beneath it. Then she died anyway, and I was left with debt and a little sister to raise. So I cleaned houses and did laundry and survived. Victor was quiet for a moment, his dark eyes thoughtful. You could finish now, if you wanted. With what money? Mine. He said it like it was obvious. You're under my protection. That means I provide for you. Salary, housing, and yes, education if that's what you want. Elena set the book aside. Why would you do that? You don't owe me anything? I owe you everything. Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You got hurt because of me. Because you worked in my house. Because I failed to protect you. The least I can do is give you back the future that was stolen. It wasn't stolen by you. No. But it was stolen in my name. By men who thought they could use you to send me a message. His jaw tightened. That makes it my responsibility to fix. Before Elena could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Boss, we have a situation. Victor was on his feet instantly, every muscle in his body shifting into readiness. What kind of situation? Calabrese sent an emissary. He's at the gate, asking to talk. The air in the library went cold. Elena watched Victor's face transform from the almost gentle man she'd been talking to into something harder, more dangerous. One emissary or a team? Just one. Older guy. Looks like a lawyer. He's unarmed and alone. Marcus glanced at Elena, then back to Victor. Says he has a proposal for ending this peacefully. Victor's laugh was sharp and humorless. They burned my warehouse, kill 3 of my people, and now they want peace? You killed 6 of theirs, Marcus pointed out. Maybe they got the message. Or maybe they're planning something worse. Victor moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at Elena. Stay here. Don't leave the library until I come back. What's happening? Elena stood, ignoring the protest from her ribs. Victor, what? Just stay here. His voice was firm but not unkind. Please. He left with Marcus, their voices fading down the hallway. Elena stood frozen in the library, her heart pounding. An emissary from the Calabrese family, a proposal for peace. It should have been good news, but something about Victor's reaction suggested otherwise. She tried to sit back down, tried to return to her book, but the words swam meaninglessly on the page. After 10 minutes of pretending to read, Elena gave up and moved to the window. From here, she could see part of the front drive, could make out the gate and the security booth beyond. A black sedan was parked at the gate. A man in a dark suit stood beside it, hands visible, clearly trying to appear non-threatening. Even from this distance, Elena could see he was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of posture that spoke of courtrooms and boardrooms rather than back alleys. She watched as Victor emerged from the mansion, flanked by Marcus and 3 other men Elena recognized as his personal security team. He moved with that same fluid grace, but there was violence coiled in every step. The conversation at the gate lasted maybe 5 minutes. Elena couldn't hear anything, but she could read body language well enough. The emissary was speaking carefully, gesturing occasionally. Victor stood perfectly still, his face unreadable. When the older man finished talking, Victor said something brief. The emissary nodded, returned to his car, and drove away. Victor stood at the gate for another minute, staring after the departed vehicle. Then he turned and walked back to the mansion, his security detail following like shadows. Elena was still at the window when he returned to the library 20 minutes later. He looked tired again, the brief energy from earlier conversation drained away. "What did they want?" she asked. Victor moved to the window, standing beside her but looking out at nothing. "They want a meeting, neutral ground. All the families present. They're proposing we settle this before it gets worse." "That sounds good, doesn't it? A chance to end this without more deaths?" "It sounds like a trap." Victor's voice was flat. "Or a show of weakness. Either way, it's dangerous." But you're going anyway." "I have to. If I refuse, I look afraid. If I look afraid, every crew in the city will think I'm vulnerable." He rubbed his eyes. "That's the trap, you see. They back me into a corner where either choice has consequences." Elena studied his profile, seeing the weight he carried. "When is the meeting?" "Tomorrow night. The old Marchetti building downtown. Supposedly neutral territory, though I have my doubts." Victor turned to face her. "If something happens to me—" "Don't." Elena cut him off. "Don't say that." "If something happens to me," he continued as if she hadn't spoken, "Marcus has instructions. You and your sister will be taken somewhere safe. The debt you owe will be erased. You'll have enough money to start over wherever you want. I don't want money. I want you to come back from that meeting alive." The words surprised them both. Victor's eyes widened fractionally, and Elena felt heat rising in her cheeks. She hadn't meant to say it quite like that, hadn't meant to reveal that somewhere in the past few days, Victor Romano had become more than just her employer or protector. "I plan to," Victor said quietly, "but this life doesn't always care about plans." They stood in silence for a moment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the library floor. Elena became acutely aware of how close they were standing, of the subtle scent of his cologne, of the way his presence seemed to fill the space around her. "I should go," Victor said, though he didn't move. "There's preparation to do for tomorrow." "Victor?" Elena reached out, her fingers brushing his arm. "Be careful." He looked down at where her hand touched him, and something shifted in his expression. "You're worried about me." "Is that so surprising?" "Yes." He covered her hand with his own, the contact sending electricity through Elena's nerves. "Most people in your position would be hoping I don't come back, would see it as freedom." "I'm not most people." Elena met his gaze directly. "And you're not the monster you think you are." Victor's laugh was soft, almost sad. "You don't know what I've done, what I'm capable of. I know you've protected me, protected my sister. I know you carry the weight of every death, every choice. I know you read Bronte too, because there's a bookmark in Wuthering Heights on your desk." Elena gestured around the library. "This isn't a monster's room, it's a reader's room, a thinker's room. Monsters can read too, but they don't feel guilty about the bodies." Elena squeezed his arm gently. "You do. I see it in your eyes every time you talk about the violence. You hate it even as you use it." Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised his free hand, carefully touching the fading bruise on her cheek. His fingers were gentle, reverent almost. "They hurt you," he said, his voice rough. "And I can't undo that. Can't take back what happened. All I can do is make sure it never happens again. By putting yourself in danger tomorrow. By doing what needs to be done." His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. "This is who I am, Elena. This is the life, violence, and consequences and choices that all lead to more of the same. It doesn't have to be." "Yes." Victor's hand dropped away. "It does. Because the moment I show weakness, the moment I try to be anything other than what I am, people die. My people. People who trust me to keep them safe." He stepped back, putting distance between them. Elena felt the loss of his presence like a physical thing. "I'll have Marcus post extra security tonight," Victor said, his voice returning to its usual controlled tone. "Stay in the mansion. Don't go near windows after dark. Don't answer the door for anyone except staff you recognize." "You really think they'd try something?" "I think the Calabrese family is desperate,
and desperate people are unpredictable. Victor moved toward the door, pausing in the doorway. Get some rest. Tomorrow is going to be difficult regardless of how the meeting goes. He left before Elena could respond, his footsteps echoing down the hallway. She stood alone in the library, her hand still warm where he'd held it, her cheek still tingling from his touch. Something had shifted between them in that conversation. Some line had been crossed that neither had intended to approach. Elena tried to tell herself it was just gratitude, just the natural response to someone who'd protected her. But she knew it was more than that. She was falling for Victor Romano, for a man who lived in a world of violence, for a man who might not survive tomorrow's meeting. The realization terrified her more than the attack had. That evening, the mansion buzzed with activity. Men arrived in dark suits, their faces hard, their movements efficient. Elena watched from her window as Victor's empire mobilized, preparing for whatever tomorrow would bring. She saw weapons being checked, routes being planned, contingencies being discussed in low voices. Christine appeared around 8 with dinner and a tablet. Victor thought you might want to video call your sister, she said, setting up the device. He's arranged a secure line, completely encrypted. You can talk as long as you want. Elena's throat tightened. Thank you. He really does care, you know. Christine's voice was softer than usual. About his people. About you. Don't mistake his control for coldness. I don't. Elena touched the tablet screen. Christine, what happens if tomorrow goes badly? Then Marcus executes Victor's contingency plans. You and Maya disappear somewhere the Calabrese family will never find you. You get new identities, new lives, enough money to never worry again. Christine met her eyes. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. After Christine left, Elena called Maya. Her sister answered on the second ring, her face filling the screen with a bright smile that made Elena's heart ache. Finally, I was starting to think you'd forgotten about me. Maya's cheerful voice was so normal, so untouched by the violence swirling around Elena's new reality. How's the gas leak situation? Almost fixed, Elena lied smoothly. Should be able to go home in a few more days. They talked for an hour about nothing. Maya's classes, her upcoming presentation on Renaissance literature, the cute guy in her study group who might have asked her out. Elena absorbed every detail, memorizing her sister's laugh, her expressions, the way she gestured when excited about something. If tomorrow went wrong, this might be the last normal conversation they ever had. You okay? Maya asked, peering closer at the screen. You look weird. Just tired. The friend I'm staying with keeps weird hours. Elena forced a smile. I miss you. Miss you too. Maya's expression softened. But seriously, Elena, you need to take care of yourself. You work too hard. Maybe this gas leak thing is good for you. Forced vacation. If only she knew. After they hung up, Elena sat in the darkness, thinking about Maya's life continuing in blissful ignorance, about guards watching her sister's every move, about the future Victor had promised if things went wrong. She didn't want that future. She wanted this one, complicated and dangerous as it was. Around midnight, unable to sleep, Elena found herself wandering the mansion's halls. Most of the security team had left for whatever preparations occupied them. The house felt emptier than usual, echoing with absence. She found Victor in his study, bent over maps and documents, a glass of amber liquid untouched at his elbow. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. You should be sleeping, he said, but there was no censure in his voice. So should you. Elena moved into the room. What are you doing? Planning routes. Backup plans? Contingencies for every scenario I can imagine. Victor leaned back in his chair. In 16 hours, I'll walk into a room with men who want me dead. I'd like to walk back out again. Can I help? Unless you have experience with gang negotiations and tactical planning, probably not. He gestured to the maps. But you're welcome to keep me company. Elena settled into the chair across from his desk, the same one she'd sat in days ago when he'd first questioned her about the attack. It felt like a lifetime had passed since then. Tell me about them, she said. The Calabrese family? Who are they? Victor considered the question, taking a sip of his drink. Old family, been in the city almost as long as mine. They used to control the docks, shipping, imports, but times changed. Containers and computers made their operation obsolete, so they've been scrambling for new territory, new revenue,
Getting desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Exactly. Victor's eyes met hers, like attacking my housekeeper to send a message. So tomorrow, what happens? You all sit around a table and discuss boundaries? More or less, there are rules to these meetings. Everyone comes with minimal security. Everyone gets to speak. No violence at the table itself.
Victor's smile was grim. Of course, rules only matter if everyone follows them. You think they'll try something? I think they're desperate enough to try anything. He set down his glass. Which is why I have 12 different exit strategies and enough backup to start a small war if necessary. Elena studied him, this man who planned for violence with the same care most people plan vacations. You've done this before. More times than I can count. It's part of the life. Territorial disputes, succession conflicts, outside crews trying to move in. Every few years, something comes up that requires sitting down with people who'd prefer you dead. Victor's expression was distant, remembering. My father taught me the most important rule. Never trust anyone at these meetings, not even your allies. That sounds exhausting. It is. Victor stood, moving to the window. But it's also survival. The moment you trust the wrong person is the moment you die. Elena joined him at the window, looking out at the garden shrouded in darkness. Do you ever wish for a different life? Something normal? Every day. The admission was quiet, almost too soft to hear. But wishing doesn't change reality. I inherited this empire from my father. These people, these businesses, these obligations. I can't just walk away. Why not? Victor turned to look at her, and in his eyes, Elena saw something raw and honest. Because too many people depend on me. The legitimate businesses employ hundreds. The protection I provide keeps entire neighborhoods safe. If I walk away, if I show weakness, it all collapses. And the people who suffer are the ones who can't defend themselves. Like me. Like you. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. This is why I do it, Elena. Why I can't afford to lose tomorrow. Because there are people like you in this city who need someone strong enough to protect them from predators. His hand lingered near her face, and Elena found herself leaning into the touch. I don't want you to die tomorrow. I don't plan to. Victor's thumb brushed her jaw. But if I do, know that meeting you, protecting you, giving you back some measure of safety. That meant something. That mattered. Don't talk like that. Elena's voice broke. Don't say goodbye like you're not coming back. I'm not saying goodbye. Victor stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I'm saying that if tomorrow goes wrong, I need you to know that you, changed something for me. Changed what? Made me remember why I do this, why I fight. His other hand came up to cup her face gently. You're not just my responsibility, Elena. You're not just someone I failed to protect. He stopped, the words unfinished, but Elena understood anyway. She understood in the way his hands trembled slightly, holding her face. In the way his eyes searched hers like he was memorizing every detail. In the way the air between them felt charged with something neither could name but both recognized. Victor, she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. He answered by kissing her, softly at first, giving her time to pull away. But Elena didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned in, her hands fisting in his shirt, kissing him back with all the fear and hope and desperate need that had been building since the moment he'd caught her falling in that hallway. The kiss deepened, becoming something hungry and urgent. Victor's arms wrapped around her, careful of her healing ribs, pulling her close. Elena felt tears on her cheeks and wasn't sure if they were hers or his or both. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. That was a mistake, he said, but his arms didn't release her. Probably. Elena's fingers were still tangled in his shirt. Are you sorry? No. His laugh was shaky. I should be, but I'm not. Then don't apologize. Elena pulled back enough to meet his eyes. Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad this happened tonight. Victor nodded, his expression a mixture of tenderness and grief.
I should let you go. You need rest. I don't want to rest. I want to stay here with you. The words came out before Elena could stop them, but she didn't take them back. Please, just for tonight. She saw the war in his eyes, responsibility battling with want, saw the moment want won. Just for tonight, he agreed quietly. Just this once. They stayed in his study until dawn, talking about everything and nothing, about books they'd loved and places they'd never been and dreams they'd given up on. Victor told her about his father, about inheriting an empire at 25 and learning to be ruthless because kindness got you killed. Elena told him about her mother, about the weight of being strong for Maya when she wanted to fall apart. Somewhere around 4 in the morning, Elena dozed off in her chair. She woke to find herself being carried, cradled against Victor's chest like she weighed nothing. What are you doing? She mumbled, still half asleep. Taking you to bed. Victor's voice was warm with amusement. You fell asleep mid-sentence. He carried her to her room, setting her down gently on the bed. Elena caught his hand before he could leave. Stay, she said, just until I fall asleep. Victor hesitated, then nodded. He settled beside her on top of the covers, and Elena curled into his side, her head on his chest. She felt his heartbeat under her cheek, steady and strong. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For making me feel safe. For making me feel like I matter. Elena's eyes were already closing. For seeing me when I'd spent so long being invisible. Victor's arm tightened around her. You were never invisible to me. I just didn't let myself look. She fell asleep to the sound of his heartbeat and woke hours later to find him gone. The sun was high, afternoon light streaming through windows. On the nightstand was a note in clean, precise handwriting. Stay safe. I'll come back to you. V. Elena held the note, reading it over and over. He'd promised to come back. She chose to believe him because the alternative was unthinkable. The meeting was scheduled for 8 that evening. Elena spent the day in an agony of waiting, trying to distract herself with books, and failing miserably. Christine appeared with updates. Victor had left at 7, the location was confirmed, security was in place. How long do these things usually take? Elena asked. Anywhere from 1 hour to all night. Christine's expression was sympathetic. Try not to worry, Victor's survived worse. But Elena did worry. She worried through dinner she couldn't eat and television she couldn't focus on. She worried as 8 became 9, became 10 with no word. It was almost 11 when she heard vehicles in the drive. Elena flew to the window, her heart in her throat. Victor emerged from the lead car, walking steadily, apparently unharmed. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. She met him at the door, not caring about propriety or what it revealed. Victor saw her, and something in his expression shifted, softened. You came back, Elena said unnecessarily. I promised I would. Victor closed the distance between them. It's over, Elena. The Calabrese family backed down. Agreed to boundaries. We have peace. Really? Really? He pulled her into his arms, and Elena went gladly. It's over. But even as relief washed over her, Elena knew this was just one ending. The beginning of whatever came next, whatever this thing between them was becoming, that story was just starting. And for the first time in years, Elena found herself looking forward to an uncertain future. They stood holding each other in the mansion's grand foyer, and Elena felt the tension drain from Victor's body like water. He buried his face in her hair, breathing deeply, and she realized he'd been just as afraid as she had. Tell me what happened, she said against his chest. Victor pulled back enough to look at her, his hand still on her waist. The Calabrese family came to the table with a proposal. They'd withdraw from my territories, acknowledge my authority, and pay restitution for the warehouse and the men I lost. In exchange, I'd allow them to maintain their existing operations without interference. And you agreed? I agreed because they were smart enough to realize they'd lost. Victor's expression was grim satisfaction. They saw what I did to their people and understood that escalation would destroy them. So they backed down. Just like that? After all the violence, all the deaths, they just gave up? Not gave up, surrendered strategically. Victor released her, running a hand through his hair. They'll rebuild, consolidate, try again in a few years when they think I'm weaker. That's how this works. But for now, yes, it's over. Elena searched his face, looking for injuries she might have missed. You're not hurt? Not a scratch. The meeting was tense, but civil. A small smile played at his lips. Turns out making an overwhelming show of force tends to encourage diplomacy. 6 people died for diplomacy. 6 people died because the Calabrese family thought they could take what was mine. Victor's voice went hard. Their deaths bought peace. That has to mean something. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to say that no peace was worth that price. But she'd seen enough of Victor's world to understand that sometimes violence was the only language certain people understood. The Calabrese family had used her to send a message. Victor had responded in kind, only louder, until they'd learned their lesson. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was over. What happens now? She asked. Victor's expression softened. Now you decide what you want. The threat is gone. The Calabrese family won't touch you or Maya. You're free to go back to your old life if that's what you want. The words should have brought relief. Instead, Elena felt a sudden hollow fear. Is that what you want? For me to leave? I want you to have a choice. Victor moved closer again, his hands gentle on her shoulders. You never chose this. Never chose to be dragged into my world. So I'm giving you the option to walk away. No strings. No obligations. What about the debt? The money you've already spent on me? Forget it. The debt is erased. You leave here with nothing owed, nothing expected. Victor's eyes searched hers. You're free, Elena. Truly free, for the first time in years. She should take it, should thank him and walk away and rebuild the life she'd lost. Should go back to her apartment with Maya and pretend none of this had happened. But that life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone who'd been invisible, who'd survived instead of lived, who'd never been kissed by a man who made her feel like she mattered. And if I don't want to leave? The question came out quieter than Elena intended. Victor went very still. What? If I don't want to go back to being invisible, if I want to stay. Elena's heart pounded. What then? Elena. Victor's voice was rough. You don't know what you're saying. You've been through trauma. You're grateful for protection, but that's not... Don't. She cut him off, stepping closer. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. I know the difference between gratitude and something more. I've had plenty of time to think about this. I live in a dangerous world. People around me get hurt. You've already seen that firsthand. I've also seen how you protect the people you care about, how you carry the weight of every decision, how you read Bronte and plan contingencies and feel every death even when you won't admit it. Elena reached up, touching his face. I see you, Victor. Not the monster everyone else sees. The man underneath. Victor closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. You could have a normal life. Find someone who doesn't have blood on his hands. Someone who can give you the future you deserve. I don't want normal. I want real. Elena's thumb brushed his cheekbone. And this, us, feels more real than anything I've had in years. This is insane. But Victor's hands came up to cover hers. You should be running as far from me as possible. Probably. Elena smiled despite everything. But I'm tired of running, tired of surviving. You said you'd give me back the future that was stolen. Well, I'm choosing this future, with you, if you'll have me. Victor opened his eyes, and in them Elena saw hope warring with fear. I don't know how to do this. How to be with someone without putting them in danger. We'll figure it out together. Elena rose on her toes, kissing him softly. But I'm not leaving, not unless you tell me you don't want this. I want this. The words came out fierce, almost desperate. I want you. I've wanted you since the moment you stumbled into my house bleeding and broken and still brave enough to deliver a message that could have gotten you killed. He kissed her then, deeply, thoroughly, like he was trying to convince her of something she already believed. Elena kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, fear and hope, and the strange certainty that this dangerous man with blood on his hands was exactly where she was meant to be. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. This won't be easy.
he warned. My life is complicated, dangerous. You'll have security following you everywhere. People will judge you for being with me. It's going to be difficult. I've been working 2 jobs for years while drowning in debt. I think I can handle difficult. Elena smiled. Besides, I've got experience cleaning your house. I know where you hide all your secrets. Victor's laugh was startled and genuine. Is that a threat? It's a promise that you're stuck with me now. I can live with that. He kissed her forehead, then her cheeks, then her mouth again. But we do this right. No more sleeping in chairs or stolen moments. If you're staying, you're really staying. What does that mean? It means you move into the house properly. Not as staff, not as someone under protection, but as... Victor hesitated, like he wasn't sure what to call it. As yours, Elena finished quietly. As mine. Victor's arms tightened around her. If that's what you want. It was insane. It was reckless. It was probably the worst decision Elena had ever made. Yes, she said anyway. That's what I want. They stood in the foyer holding each other while the grandfather clock chimed midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of something neither could quite name, but both were willing to risk everything for. The next morning, Elena woke in her borrowed room to find Victor already gone. A note on her nightstand explained he had business to handle but would return by afternoon. She smiled at his careful handwriting, then forced herself out of bed to face whatever came next. Mrs. Chen appeared with breakfast and news. Mr. Romano has asked me to help you settle in properly. He said you'd be staying permanently. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. Is that going to be a problem? The older woman's expression was unreadable. Mr. Romano's personal life is his own business. My concern is running this household efficiently. She paused, then added more gently, but for what it's worth, I've worked for him for 15 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. After Mrs. Chen left, Elena called Maya. Her sister answered cheerfully, complaining about a difficult exam and asking when Elena would be home. Actually, I need to talk to you about that. Elena took a breath. The gas leak situation is more complicated than I thought. I'm going to be staying with my friend for a while longer. How much longer? I'm not sure yet, maybe indefinitely. Silence on the other end. Then Maya's voice, careful and worried. Elena, what's really going on? You've been weird since this whole thing started. Something wrong? Elena closed her eyes, hating the lie, but knowing the truth was impossible to explain. Nothing's wrong. I met someone, and it's new and complicated, and I'm figuring things out. You met someone? Maya's tone shifted to excitement. Like a guy someone. Tell me everything. It's too soon to talk about. I just need you to trust me, okay? I'm safe. I'm happy. And I'll explain more when I can. They talked for another 20 minutes, with Maya extracting promises of details and eventual introductions. Elena agreed to everything, her heart aching at how easy it was to lie to the person she loved most. After they hung up, Christine appeared with more practical matters. Victor wants you to have access to everything you need, bank accounts, credit cards, a car if you want one. He's setting it all up today. That's too much. That's Victor. Christine handed over a folder of documents. He takes care of what's his. You might as well get used to it. Elena spent the afternoon signing papers she barely understood, feeling like she was stepping into a life that didn't quite fit yet. By the time Victor returned, she was exhausted and overwhelmed. He found her in the library, staring at bank statements that showed more money than she'd ever seen. Too much? He asked from the doorway. Way too much. Elena set down the papers. Victor, I don't need all this. I just need... You need security, independence, the ability to take care of yourself and your sister without worrying. Victor moved into the room. This isn't about buying you. It's about giving you options. It feels like I'm being bought. Then think of it as reparations. Victor sat beside her. You got hurt because of me. Your life got turned upside down because of me. This is my way of making that right. Elena studied him, seeing the determination in his eyes. You're not going to budge on this, are you? Not even slightly. Fine, but I'm paying for Maya's school myself. That part's non-negotiable. Victor's smile was small but genuine. Deal.
Though technically you'll be paying with money I gave you, so I'm not sure that counts as non-negotiable. Semantics. Elena leaned against his shoulder. How is your business today? Tedious but necessary, making sure everyone understands the new boundaries with the Calabrese family, reinforcing relationships with allies, the usual aftermath of conflict. He wrapped an arm around her. How was your day? Overwhelming. Your lawyer is terrifying, by the way. Christine? She's harmless. She threatened to have me sign my life away if I didn't read the fine print. Victor laughed, and Elena felt the sound vibrate through his chest. That sounds like her. But everything's in order now? I think so, though I still don't understand why I need 3 different bank accounts. Separation of funds, one for personal expenses, one for investments, one for emergencies. Victor kissed the top of her head. Trust me, it makes sense. They sat in comfortable silence until Elena asked the question that had been bothering her all day. What about Maya? She can't keep thinking I'm just staying with a friend. Eventually she'll want to visit or she'll figure out something's wrong. I've been thinking about that. Victor's voice was careful. What if we tell her the truth? Or at least a version of it. What version? That you met someone. That you're in a relationship. That you're living with me. Victor paused. We don't have to tell her about the attack or the Calabrese family, just that things changed and you're building a new life. Elena considered it. She'll have questions. About you. About what you do. I have legitimate answers. I own properties, businesses, investments. All of that is true. Victor's arm tightened around her. I won't lie to your sister, but I don't have to tell her everything either. And when she Googles you? When she finds articles about gang violence and criminal investigations? Then we deal with it honestly. Tell her that yes, I have a complicated past. That yes, there are dangerous elements to my life. But that I'm committed to keeping you safe. Victor turned to look at Elena directly. Unless you'd rather keep this secret? I'll understand if you want to protect her from knowing. Elena thought about Maya, about her sister's fierce protectiveness and equally fierce independence, about how she'd react to learning Elena was involved with someone like Victor Romano. She'll be angry at first, Elena said slowly. She'll think you're taking advantage of me or that I'm making a mistake. But she'll come around eventually. Maya's stubborn, but she's not unreasonable. So we tell her? We tell her. Elena took a breath. But I want to do it in person, not over the phone. We can arrange that. I'll have security bring her here this weekend if you want. Security? Elena pulled back to look at him. Victor, you can't just have her kidnapped. Not kidnapped, invited. Victor's expression was innocent in a way that didn't suit him at all. We'll send a car. Very polite. Very professional. She'll panic. Then call her first. Tell her you want her to visit. That you have someone you want her to meet. Victor stood, pulling Elena up with him. It'll be fine. I promise I won't let anyone kidnap your sister. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. But Elena called Maya that evening anyway, extending the invitation. Her sister agreed immediately, excited to finally meet the mysterious friend Elena had been staying with. This is going to be a disaster, Elena told Victor after hanging up. Probably. He kissed her temple. But at least it'll be an interesting disaster. The weekend arrived faster than Elena was ready for. She spent Friday in a state of anxious preparation, changing clothes 3 times and driving Mrs. Chen to distraction with requests to make sure everything looked perfect. Relax, Victor told her that evening. Your sister's coming to see you, not judge my house. You don't know Maya. She judges everything. Then I'll charm her. Victor pulled Elena into his arms. I'm very charming when I want to be. You're terrifying when you want to be. Charming is debatable. You weren't complaining last night. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks. They'd been sharing Victor's room for 3 nights now, and each night had revealed new layers to this man who could be ruthless in business and achingly gentle in private. That's different, she muttered. Is it? Victor's smile was wicked. Maybe I'll use the same techniques on your sister. If you try to seduce my sister, I'm moving back to the Bronx. His laugh rumbled through his chest. Noted. I'll stick to non-seductive charm. Saturday afternoon, a sleek black car arrived carrying Maya. Elena watched from the window as her sister emerged, looking around with wide eyes at the mansion's grandeur. Marcus escorted her to the door with professional courtesy, and then Maya was inside, hugging Elena so hard it made her barely healed ribs protest. "Okay, explain," Maya demanded, pulling back. "Because this place is insane, and you said you were staying with a friend from work, but unless you were secretly cleaning mansions for millionaires." She stopped, realization dawning. "Oh my God, you were cleaning mansions for millionaires." "It's complicated," Elena started, but Maya was already looking past her to where Victor had appeared in the doorway. Her sister's eyes narrowed. "And you are?" "Victor Romano." He extended a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Maya. Elena's told me a great deal about you." Maya shook his hand warily, then turned to Elena. "Can we talk? Privately?" They retreated to the library while Victor diplomatically disappeared. The moment the door closed, Maya exploded. "Victor Romano? The Victor Romano? Elena, have you lost your mind?" "I know how it looks." "Do you?" "Because it looks like you're shacking up with a crime boss." Maya's voice rose. "I Googled him the second I got in that car." "There are articles, Elena, about investigations and violence and people who've disappeared. What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking that I'm happy for the first time in years." Elena kept her voice calm. "I know his reputation. I know what people say, but I also know who he is when no one's watching, and he's good to me, Maya. He's good for me. He's dangerous. So is crossing the street in Manhattan, but we do it anyway." Elena moved closer to her sister. "I'm not asking you to like him. I'm just asking you to trust that I know what I'm doing." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got swept up in something you don't understand." Maya's expression softened slightly. "You've been through so much. Mom's death, the debt, taking care of me. Maybe you're just, I don't know, grateful to someone who made things easier?" "It's not gratitude." Elena thought about how to explain, how to make her sister understand. "Yes, he's helped me. Yes, he's made things easier. But I'm not with him because of that. I'm with him because when I'm around him, I feel like I matter, like I'm seen, like I'm more than just someone surviving until the next crisis." Maya studied her face for a long moment. "You're in love with him." It wasn't a question, but Elena answered anyway. "I think I am. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but yes." Her sister sank into a chair. "This is not what I expected when you said you met someone." "I know. Does he love you back?" Elena thought about Victor's careful tenderness, his protective fury, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. "I think so. We haven't said it yet, but I think so." "Great. My sister is in love with a crime boss who might love her back. This is fine. Everything is fine." Maya laughed, slightly hysterical. "What am I supposed to do with this information?" "You're supposed to meet him properly, talk to him, see for yourself that he's more than his reputation." Elena sat beside her sister. "And then you're supposed to trust me, like I've always trusted you." Maya was quiet for a long time. Finally, she sighed. "Fine, but if he hurts you, I'm calling the FBI." "Deal." They returned to find Victor in the dining room, where Mrs. Chen had laid out an elaborate dinner. He stood when they entered, his expression carefully neutral. "Everything all right?" he asked. "We'll see," Maya said, her tone challenging. "My sister seems to think you're worth the risk. I'm here to verify that." Victor's smile was slight but genuine. "I respect that. Families should look out for each other." Dinner was tense at first, with Maya asking pointed questions about Victor's business, his intentions, his plans for the future. Victor answered honestly without revealing too much, walking a careful line between openness and discretion. Somewhere around the main course, Maya's hostility began to crack. Victor asked about her studies, her plans for teaching, her thoughts on Renaissance literature. They fell into a discussion about Dante that went completely over Elena's head, and she watched in amazement as her sister slowly warmed to him. By dessert, Maya was laughing at one of Victor's stories about a disastrous art acquisition that had ended with a Caravaggio in his bathroom. "You have a Caravaggio in your bathroom?" Maya's eyes were wide. "It's a very nice bathroom," Victor said solemnly. "The painting seems comfortable there." After dinner, Victor excused himself to give the sisters time alone. Maya waited until he was gone, then turned to Elena. Okay, I get it now. Get what? Why you're with him. Maya searched for words. He's not what I expected. He's smart and funny, and the way he looks at you. She shook her head. Like you're the only person in the room. So you approve? I wouldn't go that far. He's still a crime boss with a terrifying reputation. Maya grabbed Elena's hand. But I can see that he cares about you, that you're happy. And after everything you've been through, you deserve to be happy. Elena felt tears burning. Thank you. Just promise me you'll be careful, that you'll call me if anything feels wrong, that you won't let love blind you to danger. I promise. They spent the rest of the evening talking, really talking, for the first time in months. Elena told Maya about the debt being cleared, about the plans to return to school, about the future that suddenly felt possible instead of impossible. So I don't have to feel guilty about college anymore? Maya asked. You're really okay financially? Better than okay. We're both going to be fine. Elena squeezed her sister's hand. You can focus on school, on your dreams, on becoming the teacher you want to be. Maya's eyes filled with tears. You've sacrificed so much for me. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat. You're my sister, my family. Nothing changes that. They hugged, and Elena felt a weight lift that she'd been carrying for years. Maya was safe. Maya was provided for. Maya knew the truth, or at least enough of it to understand. When Victor returned, Maya stood and faced him with new seriousness. I'm trusting you with my sister, she said. That's not something I do lightly. If you hurt her, if you put her in danger, if you make her regret choosing you, there won't be anywhere you can hide that I won't find you. Victor's expression was solemn. I understand, and I give you my word that Elena's safety and happiness are my highest priorities. Good, Maya softened slightly. Also, thank you for taking care of her, for giving her back a future. She won't say it because she's stubborn, but I will. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. Elena's presence in my life is the gift. Victor looked at Elena, and the raw honesty in his eyes made her breath catch. She's changed everything. After Maya left with promises to visit again soon, Elena found Victor in his study. He was standing at the window, looking out at the garden. That went better than expected, she said from the doorway. Victor turned, smiling. Your sister is formidable. I see where you get it from. She threatened to hunt you down if you hurt me. I heard. I'm appropriately terrified. Victor held out his hand, and Elena crossed to take it. She loves you very much. I love her too, which is why I'm glad she knows. Why I'm glad we don't have to hide this. Victor pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. No more hiding, no more pretending, just us figuring this out together. Just us, Elena agreed, wrapping her arms around his waist. They stood like that for a long time, two people from different worlds who'd found something unexpected in each other. The future was uncertain. It always would be, given Victor's life. But for the first time, Elena wasn't afraid of uncertainty. She was afraid of very little, actually. Not with Victor's arms around her. Not with the knowledge that she mattered to someone, that she was seen, that she was chosen. The next few months passed in a blur of new experiences. Elena enrolled in classes at Columbia, returning to the literature studies she'd abandoned years ago. Victor insisted on paying, and after one token argument, Elena accepted. She was learning to take what was offered without guilt, learning that accepting help wasn't weakness. Maya visited regularly, her initial wariness of Victor fading into genuine friendship. They bonded over books and art, and Elena often found them in the library having animated discussions about romantic poets or Renaissance philosophy. Your sister is corrupting my girlfriend with Wordsworth, Victor complained one evening, though his tone was affectionate. Someone needs to educate her, Maya called from across the room. She thought Keats was a breakfast cereal. That was one time, Elena protested. The debt collectors stopped calling. The apartment in the Bronx was surrendered without penalty. Elena's old life faded into memory, replaced by something richer and stranger and infinitely more complicated. She learned the rhythms of Victor's world, the legitimate business that occupied most of his time, the careful balance of power that kept the peace, the endless vigilance required to maintain control. She met his associates, earned their respect, learned to navigate social situations where everyone was armed and no one quite trusted anyone. It wasn't easy. There were moments of fear when Victor left for meetings that could turn violent, moments of doubt when she read articles about investigations or heard whispers about his past, moments when she wondered if loving him was the smartest decision she'd ever made or the most foolish. But there were also moments of joy. Victor reading to her in Italian, his voice turning poetry into music, waking up in his arms feeling safer than she ever had. The way he listened when she talked about her classes, genuinely interested in her thoughts on Austen or Dickinson. The quiet evenings in the library, both reading in companionable silence. 6 months after the attack that had brought them together, Victor took Elena to dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking Central Park. They'd done this before, but something felt different tonight. Victor was quieter than usual, more thoughtful. "Are you okay?" Elena asked over dessert. "I've been thinking." Victor set down his fork, meeting her eyes. "About us. About the future." Elena's heart stuttered. "What about it?" "I know this hasn't been easy for you. My life, my world, the constant danger. You've adapted remarkably, but I also know it's not what you signed up for." Victor reached across the table, taking her hand. "So I need to know. Are you happy? Truly happy?" Elena thought about it, about her classes and her sister and the library full of books, about waking up next to someone who made her feel valued, about a life that was complicated and dangerous but never, ever boring. "Yes," she said simply, "I'm happy." "Even with the risks? Even knowing that being with me means always looking over your shoulder?" "Even with all of that," Elena squeezed his hand. "I'm not naive, Victor. I know what your life is, but I also know that you're worth it." Something shifted in Victor's expression. He pulled a small box from his pocket, setting it on the table between them. Elena's breath caught. "Victor, I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet." Victor opened the box, revealing a delicate ring with a single diamond. "But I'm asking you to commit to this, to us, to building a future together, whatever that looks like." "What does it look like?" "Whatever we want it to. You finishing school, me transitioning more of my businesses to legitimate operations. Both of us figuring out how to balance your world and mine." Victor's thumb stroked across her knuckles. "I can't promise you safety. I can't promise you normal. But I can promise you that I will love you, protect you, and value you for the rest of my life." Elena felt tears spilling over. "That's the first time you've said it. That you loved me." "I've loved you since you stumbled into my house bleeding and brave and absolutely refusing to be broken." Victor's voice was rough with emotion. "I should have said it sooner." "I love you too." Elena laughed through her tears. "In case that wasn't obvious." "It's nice to hear anyway." Victor stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. "So what do you say? Will you commit to this complicated, dangerous, sometimes wonderful life with me?" Elena looked at the ring, at Victor's face, at the future stretching before them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, dangers, moments of fear, but there would also be love, partnership, the chance to build something real together. "Yes," she said, holding out her hand. "Yes to all of it." Victor slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her forget they were in a public restaurant. When they finally broke apart, Elena saw tears in his eyes too. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "Probably not." Elena smiled. "But you're stuck with me anyway." They left the restaurant hand in hand, stepping into a cool autumn evening. The city spread before them, dangerous and beautiful and full of possibility. Somewhere in it, threats still existed. The Calabrese family was quiet but not gone. Other crews watched for weakness. The past was never truly past in Victor's world, but Elena had learned something in these months. She'd learned that safety was an illusion, that control was temporary, that the only thing you could really count on was the person standing beside you. And Victor Romano, crime boss, protector, reader of Bronte and killer of men, he was standing beside her. He'd chosen her just as she'd chosen him. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything. A year later, Elena graduated with honors in English literature. Maya sat in the front row of the ceremony, crying and cheering. Victor sat beside her, his pride visible even from the stage. After the ceremony, they gathered at the mansion for a celebration. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself with the catering. Rosa and Yuki were there, along with Christine and Marcus and a dozen other people who'd become Elena's unlikely family. Speech, someone called, and Elena found herself standing with a glass of champagne, looking at the faces of people who'd somehow become hers. A year ago, I was invisible, she started. I worked 2 jobs. I carried debt I couldn't pay. I survived instead of lived. I thought that was all I deserved, all I could hope for. She looked at Victor, who watched her with eyes full of love. Then someone saw me, really saw me. Not as a victim or a burden or someone to be pitied, but as someone worth protecting, worth valuing, worth loving. This year hasn't been easy. I've had to learn new rules, navigate dangerous situations, accept help when I was used to giving it. But I've also learned that being seen, being valued, being loved, that's worth any risk. She raised her glass. Thank you all for accepting me into this strange, complicated family, for protecting my sister, for giving me back my dreams, for showing me that invisible women can become visible, and that sometimes the most unexpected futures are the ones worth fighting for. Everyone drank, and then the party continued late into the night. Elena danced with Victor in the ballroom that had been empty for years, and the house felt alive in ways it hadn't before. Happy? Victor asked, holding her close. Deliriously. Elena rested her head on his shoulder. Though I never thought this would be my life. Better or worse than you imagined? Different. Elena looked up at him. But definitely better. Victor kissed her softly. I have something for you, a graduation present. He led her to his study, where a document waited on his desk. Elena read it, her eyes widening. You're making me a partner? In your legitimate businesses? You've been helping me transition more operations to legal ventures. Your insights have been valuable. This just makes it official. Victor wrapped his arms around her from behind. Plus, I like the idea of building something together, something that's ours. Elena turned in his arms. You're giving me a stake in your empire. I'm giving you a stake in our future. Victor's expression was serious. I meant what I said. Whatever we build together. 2 months later, they married in a quiet ceremony in the mansion's garden. Maya was maid of honor, crying through the entire event. Marcus stood as Victor's best man, looking uncomfortable in formal wear, but pleased nonetheless. The guest list was small, just family and close friends, half of whom carried weapons beneath their formal clothes. It was bizarre and perfect, and utterly them. I, Victor Romano, take you, Elena Cross, to be my wife, Victor said, his voice steady. I promise to love you, protect you, and see you always. To value your strength, support your dreams, and never let you be invisible again. Elena's vows were simpler. I, Elena Cross, take you, Victor Romano, to be my husband. I promise to love you, challenge you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. To see the man beneath the reputation, and to remind you that you're more than your worst choices. When they kissed, sealing the promise, Elena felt the last piece of her old life fall away. She was no longer the invisible woman cleaning houses and drowning in debt. She was Elena Romano, wife to a dangerous man, partner in legitimate businesses, student of literature, and thoroughly, completely herself. The reception lasted until dawn. At some point, Elena found herself on the mansion's terrace with Maya, both of them tipsy on champagne and happiness. You did it, Maya said, leaning against her sister. You found your happy ending. It's not an ending. Elena looked through the windows at Victor, who was deep in conversation with some associates. It's just a different beginning. A better one? Definitely better. Elena squeezed her sister's hand. Thank you for trusting me, for trusting him. He's good to you, that's all I ever wanted. Maya smiled, though I still can't believe my sister married a crime boss. Former crime boss, mostly. Elena laughed. Elena, he's going legitimate. Slowly. Sure he is. But it was true.
Over the following years, Victor gradually transitioned more of his operations to legal ventures. It was a slow process, requiring careful negotiation and occasionally creative problem-solving, but Elena saw him change, saw him choose peace over violence when possible, diplomacy over force. He would never be entirely legitimate. Too much of his power came from reputation, from the implicit threat of what he could do if pushed. But he could be better. They could build something better together. 5 years after that rainy October day when Elena had been beaten in an alley, she stood in the mansion's library surrounded by books and papers. She was working on her master's thesis, planning to teach literature at the university level. Victor was in his study, managing the property empire they'd built together. Maya was engaged to a fellow teacher, planning a wedding for next spring. The debt was ancient history. The Calabrese family had faded into obscurity, their territory absorbed by others or gone legitimate. Life was good. Complicated, sometimes strange, occasionally dangerous, but fundamentally good. Victor found her as evening fell, sliding his arms around her waist from behind. "How's the thesis?" "Torturous. I'm comparing Gothic romance to contemporary crime fiction, and I think I've bitten off more than I can chew." Elena leaned back against him. "How's the merger?" "Tedious, but profitable. We'll own half of Midtown by next quarter." Victor kissed her neck. "Want to take a break? Mrs. Chen made your favorite for dinner." They walked to the dining room hand in hand, passing the spot where Elena had first stood bleeding and broken, delivering a message that would change everything. She thought about that woman sometimes, the one who'd been invisible, who'd survived instead of lived. That woman was gone now. In her place was someone stronger, someone seen, someone loved. Elena had learned that the most important transformations weren't always comfortable. Sometimes you had to be broken before you could be rebuilt into something better. Sometimes the worst days led to the best futures. She'd been nobody. She'd been invisible. She'd been broken and afraid and drowning in circumstances beyond her control. Now she was somebody. She was seen. She was whole and brave and exactly where she needed to be. All because one rainy day she'd chosen to walk back to a mansion instead of away from it. All because a dangerous man had decided she mattered. All because sometimes the most unexpected loves create the most extraordinary lives. The invisible woman was gone. Elena Romano had taken her place, and she had no intention of ever disappearing again.